Welcome to Two Beans in a Pod. And I have to ask, did you check your phone this morning?
Uh,
Because if you haven't, you might want to brace yourself. It is Tuesday, January 2026, and we are waking up to a notification that feels like it belongs in a sci-fi movie.
right.
NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has officially issued a G4 Severe Geomagnetic Storm Watch.
It's finally here. I mean, we've been tracking this possibility for a few days, but to see the official G4 alert drop,
Yeah.
that definitely wakes you up faster than coffee.
Absolutely. And just to set the scene for everyone listening, this isn't some random glitch. This is the result of a massive coronal mass ejection that blasted off the sun on January 18th.
And it was associated with an X1.9 solar flare,
Which is huge!
which for anyone not glued to space weather charts is a monster. I mean, X-class is the top of the scale, and this one came from sunspot region 4341.
And the scary part,
The scary part is that it was dead center on the solar disk.
so it was aimed right at us.
Bullseye. The plasma cloud has been racing across the solar system for the last 48 hours, and it is expected to arrive, well, basically right now.
So the magnetic shield is getting hammered. And, usually when we talk about this, we talk about the power grid, or satellites, or GPS drifting you into a cornfield. But there is this huge debate that we really need to unpack today, a much stranger question.
Right.
We know this G4 storm messes with our tech, but is it messing with us?
That is the big question. Are we biologically wired to the sun?
Alexander Chizhevsky, a pioneer in heliobiology who proposed that solar cycles significantly influence human history and behavior. His research suggests that periods of maximum sunspot activity correlate with heightened mass excitability, often manifesting as wars, revolutions, and social upheavals, so make sure you stick around to the end.
It sounds like, fringe science until you actually
think
look
so.
at the data he compiled.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating mix of history and biophysics.
It really is. And before we dive into all the revolutions in the brain chemistry, do us a huge favor.
Please do.
Hit that like button and subscribe. We want to keep bringing you this content well into 2026, assuming the grid holds up today.
Fingers crossed.
So let's start with the hard physics. What exactly is hitting the atmosphere today? Because G4 sounds bad, but what does it actually mean?
It is bad.
Yeah.
The NOAA scale, it only goes up to G5. So G4 is severe.
Right.
It means we're seeing major disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field. But what makes today, January 20th, really distinct is that we aren't just dealing with the magnetic storm.
Oh.
We also have an S4 solar radiation storm happening simultaneously.
Okay, G4 and S4, that's a double whammy.
It is. S4 stands for severe solar radiation, and this is the highest radiation level we have seen in over 20 years.
20 years.
You actually have to go all the way back to October 2003 to find a comparable event.
Wow. So for 2 decades, we've been relatively lucky.
Exactly. These are energetic protons that were accelerated by that X flare on the 18th. They travel much faster than the bulk plasma of the CME.
So they get here first.
They arrive in minutes to hours, just peppering the atmosphere. And to make matters even more complicated, the observers, the folks who watch this stuff 24/7, are using a term that I frankly find terrifying.
What is it?
Cannibal CME.
I saw that in the notes. Cannibal CME? It sounds like the title of a B-horror movie. Please tell me that's a technical term.
It is, and it's actually a perfect description. So imagine you have a slow eruption leaving the sun. That's CME number 1.
Okay.
Then, a few hours later, you have a second, much faster eruption, CME number 2. The second one catches up to the first one, eats it, and they merge into a single, massive, complex shock wave.
So it's a snowball effect. The second wave just pushes the first one and compresses it.
Exactly. And when that combined, messy, compressed wave hits Earth's magnetic field, the impact is prolonged and just chaotic.
It's not a quick bump.
No, it's a sustained magnetic earthquake.
Which brings us to the infrastructure. I was reading through the Lloyd's report, that's the big insurance market analysis, and they are not worried about whether we can see pretty auroras tonight.
No, they are not.
They are worried about the North American electric grid literally melting.
Overheating is the technical term. But yeah, the result is the same. The danger comes from GICs, geomagnetically induced currents.
Let's break that down. How does a storm in space turn into a current in the ground?
So the Earth's magnetic field starts shaking violently because of the solar impact.
Okay.
That shaking induces an electrical current in the Earth's crust. I mean, literally in the ground beneath our feet. That current wants to flow, and it looks for the path of least resistance.
And unfortunately, our power grid offers a pretty good path.
The best path. It flows up through the grounding wires of giant transformers.
Right.
These are the extra high voltage transformers that form the backbone of the grid.
Right.
They're designed for alternating current, not this direct current surging up from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It causes the coils inside to just overheat and degrade.
And if you lose enough of those transformers,
You're in big trouble. These aren't parts you can just, pick up at the hardware store.
Yeah.
They are custom-built, house-sized machines that take months or even years to manufacture. So if a G4 or G5 storm burns out a bunch of them at once, you're looking at a blackout that could last weeks.
That is a terrifying prospect. And the Lloyd's report was very specific about where this is most likely to happen. It's not a uniform risk across the U.S.
No, geology is destiny here. The report flags two main zones. First, the Atlantic corridor, so Washington, D.C., up to New York City.
Which is just, the population density.
Exactly. And the second zone is the Midwest states, like Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota.
Why the Midwest? What's special about it?
It's the rock. The Midwest sits on these igneous rock structures that don't conduct electricity very well.
Ah.
So when that current is induced in the ground, it can't flow easily through the deep earth. It gets forced up to the surface and right into the power lines.
So the ground rejects the current and the grid has to eat it.
Precisely. So today, Jan 20th, with this G4 storm hitting, the grid operators in the Midwest and the East Coast are sweating. They are watching those induced currents very, very closely.
So that's the hardware problem. The grid is fragile. But this show isn't just about transformers. It's about the human grid.
Right, the wetware.
This brings us back to that hook, Alexander Chizhevsky. Now, looking into his background, he doesn't sound like your typical lab coat scientist.
Not at all. He was a Soviet scientist, born in 1897. A true polymath. He wrote poetry, he painted landscapes, he studied ions, but his big aha moment didn't happen in a university.
Where did that happen?
It happened in a trench during World War I.
He was fighting on the Galician front, right?
He was, and imagine this. You're a soldier, you're surrounded by chaos, but instead of just watching the enemy, you're watching the sky. Chizhevsky started noticing a pattern.
What kind of pattern?
He noticed that the battles seemed to wax and wane in intensity alongside the activity of the sun.
So bright auroras, bloody battles.
That was his observation. When the sun flared up, the fighting got more vicious, the orders became more aggressive, the men were more agitated.
But he didn't just leave it as a war story. He turned it into data.
He did. After the war, he compiled this massive historical analysis. He looked at data from 500 BCE all the way to 1922 AD. We're talking about 72 different countries.
Wow.
And he created what he called the Index of Mass Human Excitability.
And the results were, what? Statistically significant?
They were overwhelming. He found that 80% of the most significant human events, revolutions, riots, mass migrations, the big tipping points,
80%.
80% occurred during the 5 years surrounding the maximum sunspot activity.
That is a staggering number.
It is. He was essentially arguing that history isn't just driven by kings or economics or politics. He believed the historical process is also a physical process.
Meaning what?
We are biological organisms living in the atmosphere of an active star. When the star changes, we change.
But this was the Soviet Union in the 1920s and 30s. The official state religion was Marxism.
Exactly. You see the problem.
And Marxism says history is driven by class struggle, by the proletariat rising up against the bourgeoisie because of material conditions.
Right.
Not because of sunspots.
You've spotted the conflict. That was the tragedy of Chizhevsky. In 1942, Joseph Stalin gets wind of these theories.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He demanded that Chizhevsky retract his work. Stalin basically said, the revolution happened because of the glory of the working class, not because the sun was active.
And Chizhevsky stood his ground.
He refused to retract. He was arrested and sent to the Gulag in the Ural Mountains for 8 years.
Unbelievable.
He was eventually rehabilitated, but he spent years working in coal mines in Kazakhstan before he could return to Moscow. But the theory didn't die with his arrest. He actually mapped out a cycle.
A cycle.
4 phases of human behavior that matched the 11-year solar cycle.
It's almost like a weather forecast for society. Walk us through those phases.
So phase 1 is the minimum, the quiet sun. This is a period of passivity. The masses are tolerant of repression. Autocratic rule is easier to maintain.
Look, people are just passive.
People just don't have the energy to unite or fight back. Then comes phase 2, the increase. Sunspots start appearing. The masses begin to organize. New leaders emerge.
Things are starting to bubble up.
Exactly. There's a unifying theme starting to bubble up in the collective consciousness. And then phase 3, the maximum, the peak.
Which is where we are right now, potentially.
Potentially in cycle 25.
Right.
Maximum excitability. This is the tipping point where you get revolutions, civil wars, and major social fractures.
And phase 4 is just the come down.
The decrease, a return to apathy.
Right.
The energy dissipates and society stabilizes or, stagnates, depending on how you look at it.
It is a compelling narrative, but I have to play the skeptic here. It sounds a little bit like astrology, doesn't it?
Sure.
Mercury is in retrograde, so I'm having a bad day. Has anyone actually checked this with modern data?
That is a fair question, and yes, researchers have continued this work. There was a study by Pudloff in 1992 and another by Mikulecki in 2007. They analyzed data all the way up to 2014. They found that revolutions and social unrest still cluster statistically around solar maxima.
Even in the modern era.
Even recently. The Arab Spring, for example, kicked off right during the peak of solar cycle 24.
So the pattern holds, but correlation isn't causation. The big missing piece for a long time was the mechanism. How does a solar flare 93 million miles away actually reach inside my skull and make me angry?
That was the mystery. But thanks to more recent research, like the work of Dr. Neil Cherry and some studies from the University of New Mexico, we have a proposed biophysical mechanism.
Okay, let's get into the biology. How does the sun touch the brain?
It starts with the Earth itself. We have to talk about the Schumann resonance.
The heartbeat of the Earth?
Right. The space between the ground and the bottom of the ionosphere acts like a giant resonant cavity, like a bell.
Okay.
Lightning strikes all over the world ring this bell, and it hums at a specific frequency, roughly 7.8 hertz.
And 7.8 hertz isn't just a random number for us, is it?
No, it's crucial. That frequency overlaps perfectly with human alpha and theta brainwaves.
So our brains are tuned to it.
Our brains basically evolved while bathed in this frequency. We're tuned to it.
So what happens when a G-force storm like today's hits that bell?
The solar plasma slams into the ionosphere and changes its shape. It changes the conductivity. It disrupts the Schumann resonance.
It's like someone walked up to that bell and kicked it.
Exactly. The frequency shifts, the intensity scrambles.
And our brains, which are looking for that steady 7.8 hertz signal, get confused.
They get desynchronized. And the primary biological sensor for this seems to be the pineal gland.
The pineal gland, that's the third eye, right?
Historically, yes. Biologically, it's a small gland in the center of the brain that is incredibly sensitive to magnetic fields. It regulates melatonin production.
Melatonin is the sleep hormone.
It is, but it's so much more than that. It's a master regulator. It controls circadian rhythms, blood pressure, and it acts as a mood stabilizer.
Okay.
When geomagnetic activity is high, like it is right now, melatonin production gets suppressed.
So we aren't just tired, we're chemically off balance.
Exactly. When melatonin drops, serotonin often goes out of whack. This leads to anxiety, irritability, and aggression. We also see a reduction in heart rate variability, or HRV,
A sign of stress.
a key marker of how well your body handles stress.
So biologically, the solar storm pushes us toward a fight or flight state.
Precisely. The University of New Mexico paper uses this great term, affective ecologies.
Yeah.
The sun doesn't beam a specific thought into your head. It doesn't say, go overthrow the government.
Right.
It acts as an amplifier. It shifts the baseline mood of the entire population.
So if a society is already stressed or polarized or angry,
The solar storm turns up the volume on that anger. It makes people more prone to indignation, less capable of impulse control, and more reactive to what they perceive as threats.
which brings us squarely back to the present, January 20, 2026.
The now.
We are sitting in a G4 storm. We have an S4 radiation storm raining down protons. We are likely near the peak of solar cycle 25.
We are right in the thick of it.
This is the maximum excitability phase Chizhevsky talked about.
It is. And if we layer the Lloyd's infrastructure report over the Chizhevsky theory, the picture gets really intense. Remember those risk zones?
The Midwest and the East Coast. The areas with a bad rock, so to speak.
Right, the areas with the high ground conductivity risk. If Chizhevsky is right, those populations aren't just at risk of a blackout. They are at risk of this mass excitability.
You have high-density populations in Chicago, Minneapolis, D.C., people who are already under the stress of modern life.
And now you add the biological stress, the geomagnetic storm. Lower melatonin, higher anxiety.
It's a powder keg.
And if you look at the news wires today, we're seeing exactly this kind of unrest. There are huge violent demonstrations reported in Iran right now. And closer to home, we are seeing significant unrest breaking out in Minnesota.
And Minnesota is right in that high-risk geological zone we talked about.
Exactly. It's a convergence. A scientist like Chizhevsky would look at the protests in Iran and the unrest in Minnesota and say, this is expected.
But to be clear, we aren't saying the sun caused the protests.
No, absolutely not. The grievances are real. The political reasons are local and specific. But the cosmic environment provides the energy.
Is it the heat?
It's the heat that makes the chemical reaction volatile. The sun turns a peaceful protest into a riot because the individuals in that crowd are biologically primed for aggression.
Imagine the worst-case scenario today. Imagine the Lloyd's prediction comes true and the grid actually fails in the Midwest.
That is the nightmare scenario. The power goes out, the heater stops working, communications go down. Now you have a population that is already biologically stressed by the solar storm.
And you thrust them into a survival situation.
That is exactly the environment where mass excitability stops being a theory and starts being a reality. It's a dangerous cocktail. And it really forces us to look at our own behavior differently.
That's the thing. It's terrifying, but it's also actionable. Knowing all of this, knowing that our pineal glands are under siege by protons from 93 million miles away, what is the solution?
Right.
We can't turn off the sun.
We can't, but we can understand it. The first step is just awareness. Knowing this mechanism exists gives you power over it.
So realizing that your sudden irritability might be cosmic, not personal.
It actually helps. If you know the external environment is pushing you toward aggression, you can consciously choose to counteract it. It's about homeostasis.
Maintaining balance.
The sun is trying to disrupt your internal balance. You have to actively work to maintain it.
So what's the practical advice for our listeners today?
First, situational awareness. If you see a mob forming, if you see a heated argument escalating in public disengage, recognize that there's a cosmic influence acting on that crowd. Stay away from the danger.
And on a personal level, how do we protect our own peace of mind?
You have to counter the physiology. So, since the storm suppresses melatonin, do things that boost it or help you relax. Avoid bright screens late at night. Meditate. Practice deep breathing.
There was also a mention in the research of therapeutic approaches. Dr. R. Sandygangd.
Yes, Dr. Sandy did some fascinating work with neurological disorders like Parkinson's and MS. He used extremely weak magnetic fields, we're talking picotesla range, to treat patients.
So what does that suggest?
It suggests that by applying a stable external magnetic field, or even just by stabilizing our own internal rhythms, we can retune the brain when the solar static gets too loud.
It essentially comes down to not letting the chaos of the star dictate your state of mind.
Exactly. It brings up that concept of the solar pendulum.
The idea that we are swinging back and forth with the solar cycle.
Right. If our wars, our revolutions, our moods, and even our economic crashes are dancing to the rhythm of a star, it begs the question, how much free will do we really have during a solar maximum?
That is a heavy thought.
It's humbling. We like to think we are rational actors operating in a vacuum, but we aren't. We are biological organisms connected to the cosmos.
So when the sun screams, we scream.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But maybe, if we listen closely enough and if we understand the mechanism, we can choose not to scream back.
That is a thought worth holding on to as we weather this storm today. Stay safe out there, check on your neighbors, and maybe take a few deep breaths if you feel the tension rising.
And hey, if the clouds clear, look up. The auroras should be spectacular tonight, even if they do come with a warning label.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Two Beans in a Pod.